Good evening. Our initial framework for tonight's conversation was to be an overall celebration of the living and breathing version of growth mindset, and not just the sterile definition of this overused term. Having been fortunate to have received the exemplary rating from the state of Illinois 2 years in a row, we very much wanted to acknowledge the central role that student growth plays within that equation. That was the plan 2 months ago. Much has changed since that lifetime ago planning conversation amongst our team. A funny thing happened, however, on the way to this evening's presentation. In the purest sense of the term, we began to realize the centrality of the growth mindset within the fabric of our current reality. That led to the focus of needing to create space for remote learning and growth mindset to work in tandem and to end up bringing out the very best in our entire learning community. While nobody would be willing to go so far as to say that any of this has been a blessing in disguise, the reality is that we have needed to seek out, cultivate, and maintain a level of brave and daring instruction amidst great uncertainty. After all, isn't that the very essence of the living and breathing version of growth mindset? Tonight, you'll be hearing from 3 classroom teachers, our LRC director, our instructional coach, and assistant principal about their various perspectives during this unexpected journey. One of the themes that our weekly student broadcast, TigerTube, has embraced is that of silver linings. Silver linings only exist where barriers and obstacles are repurposed into opportunities. Here is our story of that repurposing.
Thank you, Mike. Good evening. I'd like to start with Rachel. Rachel, how did you approach growth mindset with students prior to remote learning within your student-centered coaching cycles?
Hi, Carly. So the beauty of student-centered coaching is that it really lends itself to growth mindset perfectly. Within a coaching cycle, the students in front of us are at the center of every single instructional decision that we make, ensuring that all students make growth. In addition to pre-assessments, we analyze formative data from every lesson that we teach so that we know who needs what in order to make the growth that they need to make, with the understanding that growth is going to look different for every student that we work with. This approach is so helpful because it really allows us to tailor our instruction to meet all students' needs.
Thanks, Rachel. Okay, my question is for Maggie Doyle, a first grade teacher here at Cossitt. Maggie, as a new first grade teacher, how have you taken your understanding of your students during the first half of the year and translated that into your remote learning instructional adjustments since that time?
Hey, Mike. So through having my students the first half of the year, I was able to get a good idea of what my students can and cannot do. I discovered that they can do so much more than I originally assumed. My students can use Seesaw for challenges and engagement, and we've been using it all year and they're very comfortable with it. In addition, first graders love being read to. I was able to set up a reading podcast where I read them chapter books each week. This allowed the consistency of the read alouds that I was doing in the classroom. First graders can also read at their independent reading levels. I use a leveled reading program, RazKids, during the year, so they already knew and were comfortable with the program. I also know that first graders can engage in SEL. We schedule weekly Zoom meetings to share with our peers and review our Zoom norms, like waiting your turn and listening. I also encourage my class to be engaged. I've also used SEL through class activities. I encourage students to make stained glass chalk art, and then I was able to share all this work on my class website. These engagements gave students a chance to get excited and to offer encouragement to their peers. Having had time with my students also gave me a chance to learn how my students learn. I was able to take this knowledge and put together a few short math YouTube videos. Although this is not the hands-on learning that I'd anticipated, I can show them how to work remotely and to be more independent. Together, we're able to problem solve. Also, in regards to math, my students have been working on their math facts. I was able to share my leveled program with families, and I was able to encourage these families to use this at home. I was blown away with how many students were becoming teachers and taught their families how to use bubblegum math. There are so many things that my students can do, and I found that there are actually very few they cannot. Knowing my class, I know class meetings can only last about 30 minutes before we lose focus. I also know they need engagement, hands-on learning, and interaction. They cannot just be talked to. I am proud to say that I have found my students can do so much. With their growth mindsets, they have not given up and they are always looking to work harder.
Thank you so much, Maggie. My next couple of questions I have are for Vicki, one of our third grade teachers at Cossitt. Vicki, how have you seen your students grow throughout the remote learning experience?
Hey, Carly. I've seen so much independence and maturity with many of my students during this experience. We've been doing most of our communication through Google Classroom and Seesaw. Our whole group communication has been through Google Classroom, so oftentimes I'll post messages to kids when I want to reach the whole class. But because they're not so well versed with email, they often post specific questions to me on the classroom board as well. And sometimes before I can even answer their question, other students have stepped in and answered for me, quite appropriately. On more than one occasion, students have posted a screenshot of something to help explain an answer to another student. I've also had some students even remind others about following norms while on Google Classroom if things start to get silly with their posts, or even point kids to places on another post where specific questions were already answered. My students have also used Seesaw for a variety of things, from check-ins each morning to exit slips in the afternoon, to videos for science experiments, or just showcasing their talents like singing and drama, etc. With each comment I've made, I've noticed kids making changes to better their product the next time with more detail and effort. When we're in class, I didn't notice them using this feedback to drive as much change in their future products.
Thanks, Vicki. One more. What would you have anticipated that specific level of growth had we not needed to move to remote learning?
So I would have to say that while it's definitely not been better than being in the classroom, I've seen a lot of silver linings on many levels. I've seen products from some students that I would never have gotten to see in the classroom. One of my students who's in special education for reading emailed me a video that he spent hours working on one day. He read and watched a BrainPop video about the Civil War, and then he taught himself how to code a news broadcast using Tinker. The broadcaster was a stick figure, and he was reporting on what he learned about the Civil War. He included photos and used different voices. It was just incredible. And it was completely self-motivated. The students have also taken a huge interest in doing many different science experiments. What was great about this was that at the beginning of remote learning, they were simply posting videos of them doing the actual experiment. Then after some feedback, they started including all parts of the scientific process with their videos. We had a short discussion during one of our classroom Zooms to review the steps in the process, and after that, they've been so detailed with each experiment. What's been most impressive to me is how self-motivated they've all been. They've really taken advantage of showcasing their passions during this remote learning time.
Thank you, Vicki. My next question is for Shar Larson, teacher here at Cossitt in 2nd grade. Shar, as someone who has taught for many years, how would you describe your own relationship with technology? With the shift to remote learning, what adjustments have you had to make? How have they impacted your instruction? And how has this allowed you to actually see your students through a slightly different lens?
Well, thanks, Mike. I would say that I have a pretty good relationship with technology. I do know what my limits are, but I'm not shy about reaching out for support from Beth Smetko, Kelly Davis, or other staff members, especially the younger staff members. I'm happy that I set my class up on Seesaw this fall because I found that I've been using it on a daily basis during remote learning. I post announcements on it, share read aloud videos, share instructional videos with teacher created activities attached. At the beginning of our e-learning, I attended, I'll put that in quotes, a Seesaw seminar or webinar and a Zoom webinar. I've enjoyed hosting class meetings on Zoom 2 or 3 times a week. I'm also using Zoom for small group, one-on-one, and for recording my lessons, putting them on my YouTube channel. My husband's quite proud that I have my own YouTube channel. I must say I was a bit shy about videoing myself teaching, but I've quickly gotten over that. It is difficult to teach a lesson without that student engagement piece, but being able to use Seesaw has allowed for some independence with the children. I've encouraged the parents to take a back seat and just be there if really needed. Student daily response to activities and exit slips have allowed me to know what I need to focus on during my next lesson, and I'm able to respond to activities on Seesaw.
Thank you, Shar. And my next question is for Kelly. Kelly is the LRC director and helps run our Tiger Tube. Kelly has been instrumental in helping both students and teachers move forward during this time. Kelly, in your role as a remote learning resource, can you speak a little bit about what types of new things teachers are trying? How have you and your team managed to continue to produce TigerTube?
Thank you, Carly. The use of technology and remote learning has been evolving for all of us. When we first started our e-learning journey, our school was in the midst of a whole school read aloud of a book called Bob. As we were getting ready to teach remotely, everyone was asking about finishing up the book. Knowing that students, teachers, and families needed to continue the connections to the story, I had an idea to use the software for TigerTube to finish reading the book. After I received permission from the author, Wendy Mass, I recorded myself next to my fireplace with Bob. These recordings allowed everyone to stay connected to the project while also providing comfort of a regular routine during those initial days. Some families even sent pictures of themselves snuggled up in front of their TVs watching me read Bob. Another part of the evolution of remote learning has to do with the use of Zoom. Zoom was gracious enough to grant teachers free subscriptions, so I began reaching out to teachers to help them learn how to use the platform for connecting with students. It was at that time that we realized that Zoom could record the meetings, and that's when I realized it could be used to continue the TigerTube broadcasts. Using the already existing TigerTube schedules posted in Google Classroom, we scheduled Zoom meetings with our TigerTube teams. We had 2 meetings each week, one for planning and one for practicing and recording. Students have been enthusiastically participating, and we have received many positive comments about having the consistency of TigerTube broadcasts available to maintain the connection in the Cossitt community. Through the evolution of remote learning and my experiences with helping staff, I have some key takeaways. The first one is courage. Many teachers have courageously been trying out things that they were previously not familiar with, and that has allowed them to grow professionally and also to support students learning in new ways. Next are our online connections. Going forward, there needs to be some minimum standard of online connections between all teachers and students across grade levels and subject areas, whether it's through Google Classroom, Seesaw, or another platform where information about lessons can be provided. This will be helpful in situations like emergency closures due to weather so that we can easily move to remote learning. And the last takeaway is with regards to investment in technology. Using current technology and providing ongoing regular staff training to support training to staff is paramount to being prepared for remote learning and connecting to students in the future. Going back to a recent TigerTube broadcast, students talked about the silver lining in remote learning. The silver lining in remote learning for me is that I have had time to explore and learn about the many platforms that have been made available to teachers. I've dabbled in Pear Deck, Edpuzzle, Tumblebooks, Canopy Kids, and Libby. This week, Tiffany Howard and I are going to try a new program, Book Creator, that I learned about at the IDEA conference this past February. I'm really looking forward to working with her first grade students on this project. It has been an amazing 6 weeks. Our teachers have done a wonderful job stepping up to the challenge of remote learning and have been working hard to provide student-focused, challenging lessons. Although all of us would rather be with our students in person, the silver lining in the evolution of remote learning is that we are finding new and unique ways to connect with students and their families.
Thank you, Kelly. My last question is for Rachel Galloway, our IC coach again here at Cossitt. Rachel, in your role as instructional coach, how have you witnessed growth mindset with teachers during this remote learning journey?
Well, I've seen so many examples that I don't really even know where to begin. Like Kelly just mentioned, in addition to learning how to use all sorts of new programs and technologies, I see teachers constantly tweaking how they're instructing their students. It takes a lot of work for them to try to learn these new things. And let's be honest, once you put all the work in, you sometimes feel inclined to just stick with it because the work is done and you feel like you actually know what you're doing. But our teachers are not willing to settle for that. If what they're trying isn't working as well as they hoped, then they're going back to the drawing board. And sometimes it's just a small tweak that's needed, but other times they're choosing to once again try something completely new in hopes that the experience will be better for their students. One example that I've seen a lot of teachers is trying to find the right fit between whole class live lessons and some of the flipped classroom approach. And then you throw in the fact that many teachers are still trying to pull small groups or meet with individuals when needed. The ways that our teachers are making sure that they're still meeting everybody's needs while they're delivering instruction in ways that they never could have imagined has been so impressive to me. And I've never been more proud to be a Cossitt teacher. And it's made me really thankful that my own children are future Cossitt students who are going to be taught by these very teachers.
Thank you for sharing that, Rachel. My question now is for Carly Stamer, our assistant principal here at Cossitt. Carly, last year's board presentation for Cossitt was titled, All Learning is Social and Emotional Learning. In ways that aren't always quantifiable, we all know that students and adults learn more when they're feeling safe, valued, and known. Being fully aware of the levels of fear and anxiety our students might be experiencing during this time in their lives, how have Cossitt teachers approached keeping students connected to their school, their teachers, and their classmates?
Thank you, Mike. This year, as we started the year, we continued to focus on growth mindset through our SEL lens. Teachers continued to embrace growth mindset for themselves while also helping students gain an understanding as well. Teachers and students together have morning meetings, class meetings, and throughout the year we have family meetings to discuss growth mindset and the power of yet. During this surreal time we are all living in, it has been important for teachers to find a healthy balance between remote teaching, family life, and the stressors that have come with. By all accounts, it seems like the level of discussions at morning meetings have never been more important and valued by the students and the teachers. There's been a much deeper level of sharing during these times. With that being said, I'd like to share 3 of the many highlights that have come our way recently. One of our 3rd grade students recently took time to reach out to a family member, his uncle, who is a United States District Court judge, and he interviewed him. He took what he learned from this interview of his uncle and created an 11-minute video to share what he learned about the role of the judge. Not only did this experience allow him to gain the knowledge, but it provided him with an opportunity to connect with a family member. Next, I'd like to share with you an email we recently received from one of our 2nd grade parents. Dear Mr. Machowski, I hope this email finds you well and your family are hanging in there during these strange times. My son, a 2nd grader, usually takes the bus and has developed a lovely friendship with his bus driver. She is one of the kindest, most caring women out there. We have all been thinking about her and wondering how she's doing and if she needs any help with anything, since she obviously cannot be driving the buses right now. We're thinking about trying to reach out in some way, but didn't know how to start. And they go on to ask for contact information and if there's a bus company and how we can connect with them. Realizing she says this is quite a strange request, but we just want her to know that she's truly been missed and she was part of our day-to-day lives. So we found that very touching to receive an email that not only just to our teachers, but they're thinking about our bus drivers too. And it just goes to show that these children have really built a lot of pieces through their SEL lens. And then as we were putting this together, we just received one more email today that just couldn't go without sharing. Recently, one of our special education teachers reached out in a way to help us share with our community how much we miss them and how much we can't wait to see them again. And the video was shared. And one of our 6th grade students who has been with us for all of his Cossitt years, since 1st grade, recently is in the hospital and had to go in to get some blood work done and another chemo treatment. Today was that day, and today was a difficult day for him. And there was different things that they had to try, but along the way, they were able to get things going and his chemo treatment will be happening. But what I wanted to share was that Mom sent the link to this video for him and his dad to watch while he was in the hospital today. And his last comments was that he said was, that was just what I needed. And this has made me smile so much today. So it was just a touching way for us to know that we are reaching out to our students. And even though they might be experiencing difficult times, we are all here and we're all in this together. So since we've been away from school, TigerTube has continued as a way of us communicating and sharing news. And as you've heard throughout our panel of discussions and questions, with the recent times that we have had, they have also added an addition to TigerTube titled Silver Linings. And with that, I'm going to pass it to Mike for our one last silver lining.
And this is just me going all the way back to the beginning of our presentation, where we all sort of collectively wanted to put together this presentation that would give a complete picture of how all of us here at Cossitt have been able to connect the dots of remote learning as they embedded themselves within the growth mindset in a way that we all feel very strongly represents the very heart and soul of Cossitt School. Thank you. Thank you for making TigerTube part of your day and night.